The psychological depths of human interaction, starting with the insights of Dr. Robert Cialdini, a renowned expert on the science of influence. He highlights a concept that resonates throughout human behavior: scarcity. The scarcity principle asserts that people value things that seem rare or diminishing. Interestingly, this principle doesn't just apply to physical items. It extends to affection and attention too. When someone perceives another's attention as scarce, they tend to desire it even more. This forms the cornerstone of why strategic ignoring can effectively ramp up the attraction. But it's essential to clarify, this isn't about manipulation. It's about recognizing human psychology and using that knowledge responsibly. With that in mind, let's explore the first reason why ignoring someone can amplify their interest. Imagine chatting with someone almost every day, texting back and forth like it's a game. Then, out of the blue, you suddenly stop responding for a day. What happens? That person can't help but think about you. This isn't mere coincidence, it's psychology in action. Dr. Daniel Gilbert, a Harvard University psychology professor, explains that our brains are wired to seek certainty. When uncertainty creeps into relationships, our minds kick into overdrive, trying to unravel it. This uncertainty triggers a surge of neurochemicals, especially dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. The thrill of uncertainty can be akin to piecing together a captivating puzzle, making the chase all the more exhilarating. Picture this. You've been showering someone with attention for weeks, and then, without warning, you become less available. The sudden shift acts like a spotlight on your absence. Dr. Elaine Hatfield, a pioneer in the study of love and attraction, notes that the contrast effect in psychology suggests we perceive experiences relative to their context. When behaviors change unexpectedly, the impact can be significant. Have you ever noticed how, when someone suddenly pulls back their attention, it makes you want to get closer to them? There's some serious psychology behind why that happens, and it all starts with a little trick our minds play on us when attention feels scarce. In this video, we'll break down why ignoring someone can make them want you more, and how this all ties back to some fascinating psychological principles. Don't worry, we'll keep it ethical. You'll learn how to apply this knowledge in a responsible way. So, let's start by understanding the core idea. When you pull back your attention from someone, you're essentially creating a sense of loss or scarcity. This doesn't just affect material things, like when the last slice of pizza suddenly seems more delicious. It applies to emotional attention too. People value what they feel is slipping away. When someone feels like they're losing your attention, they often respond by wanting it even more, sometimes without even realizing it. A study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships backs this up. Participants who felt like they were losing their partner's attention reported a big increase in their efforts to reconnect. But here's the key. This effect is strongest when the withdrawal of attention is unexpected and happens occasionally. Constantly ignoring someone won't work. It doesn't build connection. It just creates emotional distance. The real art lies in being strategic, creating moments of scarcity where the other person starts to realize how much they value your attention. This brings us to a very familiar concept. You always want what you can't have. It's more than just a catchy saying. It's actually based on what's called the forbidden fruit effect. This idea, also known as reactance theory, was first introduced by psychologist Dr. Jack Brame. Here's how it works. When people feel like their freedom to choose is being limited, they want that choice even more. Essentially, when you make yourself less available by ignoring someone, you become that forbidden fruit. You're not directly rejecting them, but by pulling away, you're making yourself seem harder to reach. And just like that, they may find themselves wanting your attention even more than before. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Personality showed that people rated potential romantic partners as more attractive when they were told those partners were unavailable. The researchers called this the Romeo and Juliet effect. You've probably seen this in action, whether it's a crush on someone who's playing hard to get, or feeling more attracted to someone who seems out of reach. But, like with everything, there's a limit. If someone feels completely shut out, they're likely to give up rather than chase harder. It's about finding the balance. But there's more. When you withdraw attention intermittently, you're tapping into something called intermittent reinforcement. This is a psychological principle where people react more strongly when rewards, like your attention. Imagine a slot machine that pays out randomly. That unpredictability makes people keep playing, hoping for a win. The same happens with attention. If you're always available, your attention loses its value, but if you give it in bursts, people find themselves craving more. When you're always available, people can start to take you for granted. But when your attention feels like something they could lose, they're far more likely to appreciate and chase after it. So, next time you find yourself in a situation where you want to capture someone's interest, consider pulling back just a little. You might be surprised at how quickly they start paying attention. One interesting thing that happens when you pull back your attention is something psychologists call the spotlight effect. Normally, people tend to overestimate how much others notice them. We walk around thinking that everyone's paying attention to us, when really, they're usually focused on themselves. But when you stop giving someone attention, something changes. Suddenly, they start noticing your absence much more than they did when you were around all the time. It's like when you lose a tooth. This shift can make the other person hyper-aware of how much they miss you, even if they didn't realize it before. But remember, use this trick carefully. If you're constantly absent, it can backfire and lead to detachment instead of attraction. What's also fascinating is how this connects to something known as the forbidden fruit effect. You've probably heard the saying, "You always want what you can't have," and that's exactly what's happening here. When you pull back your attention, you make yourself just a little harder to reach, which can trigger a psychological response called reactance. This is when people feel like their freedom to choose is being limited. It's the same reason why we're often more attracted to people who seem unavailable. But again, if you're completely unreachable, people might stop trying altogether. It's about being just a little out of reach, enough to spark interest, but not so much that it feels hopeless. When you pull back intermittently, you're also playing into something called intermittent reinforcement. This means that when people get your attention in unpredictable bursts, it becomes much more rewarding. Think of it like a slot machine. You don't know when you'll win, but the possibility keeps you hooked. The same goes for relationships. If you're always available, your attention becomes predictable and loses its value. But if you're a little less consistent, it makes people crave your attention more because they don't know when they'll get it next. Another thing to consider is the psychological debt you create when you ignore someone. This isn't about manipulation. It's just how our brains work. When someone feels like they're losing your attention, it creates a kind of imbalance. It's like owing a debt, and their natural response is to try to repay it by giving you more attention. The key here is that this only works if the withdrawal of attention is unexpected and not too frequent. If you're constantly ignoring someone, they won't feel the need to reconnect, they'll just drift away. In the end, the magic of ignoring someone lies in the balance. You don't want to shut people out, but you also don't want to be constantly available. It's about creating moments where your attention feels valuable, where people notice when you're gone and appreciate you when you're around. When done right, pulling back just a little can make people realize how much they value your presence, and that's where the real power lies. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, press the subscribe button, and also drop your thoughts in the comment section.